So a wonderful day. Thank you very much for Alan and giving us this great introduction to the story. And Vanessa has introduced us to the Song of Faith. You remember 1968? Clear as a bell. Well, in 1968, the United Church adopted something called the New Creed. And it goes, you know it, we are not alone, right? And we could say most of it, I think, if we gave ourselves time. That's just the beginning of the new statement of faith. And so you can see why it's not the kind of thing we're ever going to hope to memorize, but she's done such a beautiful job of giving us those words, and I've invited her to continue to bring it to us at the rest of the summer. So we'll be familiar with it, even if we don't have it committed to memory. How many of you ever went to vacation Bible school, sent your kids to vacation Bible school, or taught at one? So you would have known this wonderful story that Alan read for us this morning, right? Daniel in the lion's den. It was a great story to teach the kids, right? And you could act it out. Everybody wanted to be a lion, nobody wanted to be Daniel. Well, the book of Daniel has several of those fabulous stories. And as Alan said in the introduction, they're actually written as a Back to the Future story. By that I mean they were written around 167 before Jesus was born, but they're talking about as if they were written hundreds of years earlier. So let's not get caught up on the fact that they have some people wrong. They name people who didn't exist. But because they're not writing history, and so we don't want to get hooked on that. They're writing a story to talk to our hearts. And I think that's why we are finding engaging with children. So the other story in this book is the one of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The fire got hotter, hotter than it ought to be. Right? The three friends in the fiery furnace. So in the book of Daniel, I have a scarf from the knitting group here as my sermon illustration. I just got to make sure that I take my brakes off before I hurtle myself into open space. Many books in the Bible are written by more than one author. That's not news to you. But most of the time, like if you think of the Gospel of Mark, they try to make it look like it's all one author. I think that's easy to understand. So in knitting, I don't know if you know, but people like Joan M. here, who are very good knitters, if they have two pieces of wool that are almost the same color and they want to blend it, they unravel a bit and kind of weave it so you have both colors together, and the person looking at it may not know exactly where one ends and one starts, right? That's what the Gospel of Mark and other literature in the Old and New Testaments are like. This is what Daniel is like. You're quite clear that you've got different speakers. Not only are they talking about different topics, they're writing in different languages. So it's quite a help, don't you think, for biblical sleuths to think, I bet there was more than one author. A long, long time ago, Hebrew ceased to be the language of the people of the Jews, and it became Aramaic. Most of the book of Daniel, between these two white places, is Aramaic. The two white is Hebrew. If you put it all together, it gets translated one more time into Greek, and then it's called the Septuagint, and they have even more stories than the original book of Daniel. So if you've ever heard of the story of Susanna, she's down here and she is in Greek. It's just kind of history interesting, isn't it? I love this stuff about the Bible, and that may be partly why I went to theological college, and didn't drop out. The fact that I remember this much is why I didn't get kicked out. So, twice in the story of this book, we have a basically similar story. A good, faithful Jew, or three in the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego first, and then Daniel, are put in a place of of predictable death because they refused to stop being faithful to their tradition of Torah. As we heard with Daniel, he continued to pray even when it had been outlawed. So at a very basic lesson here is the importance of these spiritual practices that help you know who you are and who you're not. And that's, if there was nothing else in this book, that's a very good lesson for us to have. What are the things that connects you, staples you to your own philosophy? That you find when life is hard, when life is really tough, you go, well, this is a chance for me to lean into the philosophy that sustains me. If there was nothing else in that book, this is a very important reminder for us in the 2023. That hard times, and we're in them, is a time for us to lean into our philosophy, which for us is the style of life called generally Christianity. That's a great gift. But the authors were hoping for something else. They were hoping to provide hope by reminding the people of their history. But instead of reminding them, as I said, this is a Back to the Future book. So they're setting it as if they're writing a long time ago, looking forward. But the gift of hope is that sense of God's rescue in extraordinary times, extraordinary circumstances. The fire is hotter than it ought to be. And when they look in at the fire, they see there are 4 people in the furnace, the 4th being the angel of God. When Daniel is in the lion's den, he said it is the angel that calmed the lions. And so there is that reminder of we are not alone. I don't know who wrote these books. I'm willing to say that's not so important. I do know that it is a gift of God to wish us to be creatures of hope. And that's the big story here in this book. That's what the whole scarf keeps us warm with. Hope. We are not alone. We've been through tough times before, and even in the toughest circumstances, God is with us. We may not see an angel in the furnace beside us, but that story is a reminder that we are not alone. The warmth comes from the Spirit's gift of hope. We can talk more about what happened with Darius, who wasn't Darius that they said was, but the real thing for us to ask, I believe, is if this book, it gives us anything, it gives us a chance to answer the same question it asked back then. So Daniel is an interpreter of dreams. And there are a couple of places in this book where dreams are a tremendous insight to the events of the day. One of the dreams at the end, which Daniel alone can interpret, gives us our phrase, writing on the wall. Daniel is able to see the writing on the wall and predict a sequence of emperors to come rolling through. And so he interprets that. And it says that in a particular year, at a particular time, this will come to an end, and the Son of Man will be vindicated. Another phrase we get from Daniel, the Son of Man will be vindicated and set up on the right hand of God. So you recognize some phrases of how important this book is. And that at that time there was a statue with the head of gold right down to feet of clay. And that a boulder from a mountain not made with hand comes crashing into that statue. And that is the end of time. This is an apocalyptic vision. And at the end of time, God's rule comes, and it is a rule of peace and justice. Now, you remember those old cartoons from the 1990s where someone would be walking down the street saying, "The end is near"? So I want you to imagine there's a whole group of people saying the end is near, looking in horror at a new guy walking down the street saying, "The end is tomorrow." And they all look at each other and goes, "Amateur." You never get caught on that kind of prediction. Well, in the book of Daniel, we have that very distinct thing. And so they thought that in a certain day, well, not quite literally day, but it would end. So then an angel had to be sent in a new color to Daniel to say, no, you misunderstood the original and it's going to end later. So that's one of the things that's very interesting about apocalyptic literature. It doesn't seem to kill the movement when it's wrong, when it fails to happen when they want it to. But here's the thing. This book describes a day in which the reign of God comes. The fact that the day is not what they predicted, I don't want it to distract us. I want you to think, what does that mean for you? What does it mean for you that God would be finally the voice heard? And I've asked some people in this congregation how they would answer this, and you might hear your own voice if you've been in a group with me in the last couple of years. So what does it imagine for you? Some people said these things. Society at its best. A world focused on people, not profits. A world where there is enough for all. Hope for young people who want to bring children into this world safe and secure. The end of war and the birth of global justice. Courage. A recognition of the importance of the natural world and creation, and the adoption of indigenous ways. Respect and willing to listen and learn to indigenous wisdom. Somebody said a very practical answer. Safe and clean drinking water for all. Clean air. Solid and reliable food sources. A world with enough for all sums up what most people said. So the gift of hope comes when we have a sense of what we're hoping for. And here at the end of Daniel, we get a chance to think, what does it mean for us? Then it meant a certain rebuilding of a temple, vindication against the Hellenistic rulers. We're not there anymore. And on this kind of multiculturalism awareness, we have this sense of enough for all, food for all. And I just want to make sure that we keep our hope up to date. We have a sense of answering that question, what are you hoping for? If it should happen that that mass of stone should come and knock down the statue of the empires of this world, and the reign of God comes rolling in front of our weeping eyes, what are you hoping you would see? The Christ taught us of the importance of love and compassion. I would encourage you on these late summer evenings to take 10 minutes over a cup of wonderful herbal tea or coffee. Herbal coffee. I think coffee is a herbal drink. And just ask yourself, what is that vision? What is your hope? Because once you get that, once you have a clear image of just one of those things, the opportunity I know will present itself in the next 10 days for you to say something, pray something, or do something to make that hope a stronger reality in your life or the life of somebody else. And when that happens, let the voice of Daniel echo in your head. We've been through tough times before. May our hope keep us alive as we work through the tough times of the rest of the year, known as 2023. The world is like that statue. God is still the God of love and creation. And may our hope give us words, actions, and prayers this week. Amen.